mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Picture yourself watching a live television broadcast when Hollywood star Mel Gibson suddenly makes unexpected revelations about gospel legend CeCe Winans. What begins as a normal interview quickly turns into a moment that leaves audiences stunned as Gibson shares surprising insights about her life and career. Today, we break down what was said, why it's getting attention, and what it could mean for both icons. Stay tuned, because this story takes twists few people saw coming. Why Hollywood can't ignore Mel Gibson's words. Mel Gibson is not just another Hollywood name that fades in and out of relevance. He is one of those rare figures whose presence alone can shift attention the moment he speaks. Whether people agree with him or not, there is a consistent pattern that follows him everywhere. When Mel Gibson talks, the industry listens, the audience reacts, and the media immediately pays attention. His rise to fame wasn't accidental. Gibson became widely recognized through powerful performances in films like Lethal Weapon, where his intense screen presence and emotional depth made him stand out in a crowded industry. But it was during the 1980s that his career truly began gaining momentum, as he quickly evolved from rising actor to global film star. That momentum only expanded when he stepped behind the camera and proved he was more than just a performer. One of the defining moments of his career came with Braveheart, a film that didn't just succeed commercially, but left a lasting mark on cinematic history. The movie went on to win multiple Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, and it cemented Gibson's reputation as someone capable of shaping powerful, emotionally driven storytelling on a massive scale. His portrayal of William Wallace became iconic, symbolizing rebellion, sacrifice, and freedom in a way that resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. But fame, especially at Gibson's level, rarely comes without turbulence. Over the years, his name has also been tied to controversy, public backlash, and highly debated personal incidents. These moments created sharp divides in public opinion. Some saw him as a misunderstood artist under constant scrutiny, while others viewed him as a polarizing figure whose actions overshadowed his achievements. His career became a mix of admiration and criticism, constantly swinging between praise and controversy. Yet despite everything, one thing never changed. People still paid attention. Even at his lowest points in public perception, Gibson never disappeared from relevance. In fact, the controversies often amplified interest in what he had to say next. Part of this comes from his personality. He has never been someone who carefully filters his opinions to fit public expectation. Instead, he tends to speak with directness, even when it risks backlash. That unfiltered honesty is exactly what keeps audiences watching him closely. Another factor that makes Gibson influential is his willingness to acknowledge mistakes. While many public figures often avoid accountability, Gibson has at times openly addressed his past actions, which has added layers to how people perceive him. To some, it signals growth and honesty. To others, it is still part of a complicated legacy. But either way, it reinforces his position as someone people cannot easily ignore. Beyond controversy, Gibson's work has also been shaped by his deeply personal beliefs, especially his faith. Films like The Passion of the Christ reflected not just his filmmaking ability, but also his personal convictions. The film sparked global debate due to its intense depiction of religious themes, yet it also strengthened his connection with audiences who shared similar beliefs. It showed that Gibson's creative decisions are often driven by something deeper than commercial success. In recent years, he has continued to remain active in the industry, taking on new projects and making appearances in major productions. Even after years of public scrutiny, his influence in Hollywood has not completely faded. If anything, it has evolved into something more complex, less about dominance in the industry and more about persistent relevance. And this is where things start to become interesting, because When someone like Mel Gibson, a figure known for conviction and unpredictability, chooses to speak about another respected name in entertainment, people naturally pay attention, especially when that name belongs to someone like CeCe Winans, who has built her career on faith, discipline, and carefully guarded integrity. So the question begins to form quietly in the background. What exactly connects Mel Gibson's perspective to CeCe Winans' story? And why does it seem like both of them, despite coming from different worlds of entertainment, share similar struggles when it comes to faith, fame, and personal conviction? To understand that connection, we need to look closer at CeCe Winans herself and the path that shaped her into one of the most respected gospel voices of her generation. Why CeCe Winans chose faith over fame. CeCe Winans is not just a gospel singer whose voice fills arenas and churches. She is a figure whose entire life story is deeply tied to faith, discipline, and unwavering conviction.
But it's about spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ to as many people as we possibly can.
Over the decades, she has become one of the most respected voices in gospel music, not only because of her vocal power, but because of the way she has consistently chosen purpose over popularity. Her name carries weight in the gospel world, but what many people don't always see is the foundation beneath that success. The quiet decisions, the sacrifices, and the moments where she had to step away from opportunities that could have elevated her career in a more mainstream direction. For CeCe, success was never just about fame. It was about alignment with something deeper. Born and raised in Detroit, CeCe Winans grew up in the faith-centered Winans family, where gospel music and ministry shaped daily life. Surrounded by church service and 10 siblings, she developed a natural musical identity early on. Her emotionally rich voice stood out in church gatherings, leading her into ministry through music as a teenager. Rather than instant fame, her path was built on steady growth, family support, and early recognition within local gospel communities, forming the foundation of her lasting influence in gospel music. In the early 1980s, her path expanded when she became part of the gospel group The Winans alongside her brothers. This collaboration helped introduce her voice to a wider audience, and it wasn't long before people began recognizing that she wasn't just part of the group. She was a standout presence within it. That recognition eventually paved the way for her solo career. When CeCe Winans launched her solo career in the 1990s, everything began to shift. Her debut album, Alone in His Presence, marked a turning point not just for her personally, but for gospel music as a whole. The project showcased a more intimate, reflective style that connected deeply with listeners. It wasn't about performance alone, it was about sincerity. As her career progressed, CeCe released multiple projects that continued to strengthen her place in the industry. Her music carried themes of hope, healing, and devotion. And over time, she became known as one of the most influential voices in contemporary gospel music. Awards, including Grammys and Dove Awards, followed, but for CeCe, recognition was never the final goal. It was simply a byproduct of staying true to her calling. But what truly set her apart was not just her success, but her decisions behind the scenes. There were moments in her career where CeCe was presented with opportunities that could have pushed her further into mainstream entertainment. However, she often made choices that prioritized her spiritual convictions instead. These were not easy decisions, especially in an industry where visibility often defines success. One of the most discussed examples involves her decision to step away from participating in a high-profile music video connected to Whitney Houston. While the opportunity could have brought major exposure, CeCe ultimately chose not to take part due to personal and spiritual alignment. For her, it was not about rejecting success, but about protecting her values. This pattern of decision-making became a defining part of her identity. Like Mel Gibson, who also built a reputation around strong personal convictions, CeCe Winans consistently demonstrated that faith was not something she expressed only through music. but something that guided her real-life choices. Her family background played a major role in reinforcing this mindset. Raised by parents who emphasized integrity, humility, and spiritual discipline, CeCe grew up with a clear understanding that fame should never come at the expense of faith. That foundation remained with her even as her career expanded internationally. Outside of music, CeCe Winans built a life centered on family, faith, and service.
You know what? I'm just excited about what God is going to do. He's done a lot already. He's moving right now.
Her marriage to Alvin Love II and their 2 children reflect her effort to balance career and home life while staying grounded as a wife, mother, and woman of faith. She has also supported philanthropic work focused on children, families, and community development, using her influence for impact rather than self-promotion. Despite her strong reputation, she has faced some discussion and speculation about distancing herself from mainstream entertainment, with some questioning its effect on her career, while others see it as a sign of integrity. And this is where the narrative begins to shift into something deeper. Because when someone like CeCe Winans, who has spent her entire life carefully balancing faith and fame, becomes the subject of quiet speculation, it raises questions that go beyond music or career choices. Questions about pressure, questions about perception, and most importantly, questions about what happens when personal conviction collides with public expectation. These are the very tensions that begin to surface more clearly when CeCe's story moves from her private decisions into the public spotlight, especially during a moment that would later be described as a live television turning point. And that moment is where everything starts to change. The truth CeCe Winans finally addressed on air. For years, CeCe Winans had been seen as someone who stood firmly above the noise of the entertainment industry. Her image was built on consistency, grace, and an unshakable commitment to her faith. But even the most carefully grounded public figures eventually face moments where silence is no longer an option. And for CeCe, that moment arrived during a live television appearance that would unexpectedly become one of the most talked-about turning points in her public life. At first, the interview seemed like a routine feature. CeCe was invited to speak about her journey, her music, and her continued success in gospel entertainment. Viewers expected a calm, inspirational conversation, the kind she had done many times before. But underneath that calm setup, there had been growing public curiosity surrounding her personal choices, her distance from certain mainstream opportunities, and long-standing rumors that had quietly followed her over the years. CeCe had always chosen not to engage with speculation. Instead, she let her work speak for itself. But live television is different. There are no edits, no pauses, and no chance to reshape how things unfold once words are spoken. And that is exactly what made this moment so significant. As the conversation progressed, the tone subtly shifted. Questions became more direct, touching not just on her career, but on the personal convictions that shaped her decisions. The pressure was not aggressive, but it was persistent enough to bring attention to topics she had often kept private. And slowly, the atmosphere in the studio began to feel heavier than expected. CeCe, known for her calm presence, responded with honesty rather than avoidance. She acknowledged that her journey had not always been simple, especially when it came to balancing the expectations of the entertainment industry with the boundaries of her faith. While many artists struggle with fame in silence, CeCe admitted that there were moments where she felt the weight of being constantly observed and interpreted by the public. What made the interview even more unexpected was the way the conversation opened the door to deeper reflection. She spoke about the emotional pressure of living in an industry where image often matters as much as talent. Every decision, every collaboration, and every absence from a project could become a topic of speculation. And for someone like CeCe, whose choices were guided by belief rather than trend, that pressure carried a different kind of intensity. Then came the moment that shifted everything. During the broadcast, Mel Gibson offered his perspective on CeCe Winans' situation, drawing from his own experiences with public scrutiny and controversy. He spoke about how public figures are often judged without full context, with narratives forming before the truth emerges. His remarks felt direct and reflective, as if addressing shared pressures rather than delivering a prepared statement. This shifted the interview beyond CeCe alone, turning it into a broader discussion about fame, judgment, and the personal cost of holding firm beliefs while living under constant public attention and observation. CeCe listened as he spoke, and for a brief moment, the tone in the studio softened. It was not a confrontation, but a recognition. Two individuals from different worlds acknowledging a shared experience of scrutiny and misunderstanding. The audience, watching in real time, could sense that something deeper was unfolding beneath the surface of the interview. As the discussion continued, Gibson raised questions that lingered long after they were spoken. He challenged the idea of perfection expected from public figures, pointing out how audiences often forget that celebrities are still human, still flawed, and still navigating personal struggles behind the scenes. These questions did not directly accuse anyone, but they forced viewers to reconsider how quickly assumptions are made. CeCe, in turn, reflected on her own journey. She shared that her faith had not shielded her from difficulty, but it had given her a foundation to endure it. According to her, belief does not remove challenges. Instead, it provides direction when everything else feels uncertain. That honesty resonated deeply with viewers who had followed her career for years. What made this live moment even more impactful was not just what was said, but what it revealed. It exposed the quiet tension between public expectation and private conviction, a tension CeCe had carried throughout her career, but rarely spoken about so openly. By the end of the interview, the conversation had taken on a different meaning entirely. It was no longer just a media appearance. It had become a reflection of how fragile public perception can be, and how quickly narratives can shift when honesty enters the picture. But even after the broadcast ended, one question remained unanswered. Was this simply an emotional moment triggered by public pressure? Or was there something deeper behind CeCe Winans' willingness to finally speak so openly? And more importantly, what does this moment reveal about the lasting impact of faith when it is constantly tested in the spotlight of fame? To understand that fully, we now need to look at how CeCe Winans' influence extends far beyond interviews and controversies, and how her legacy continues to shape countless lives long after the cameras stop rolling. Why CeCe Winans' story still matters today. CeCe Winans' influence reaches far beyond the stage, far beyond awards, and far beyond the moments captured on camera. Over time, she has become more than a gospel artist. She has come to represent consistency, conviction, and a quiet kind of strength that does not depend on public attention to remain powerful. What makes her legacy stand out is not only her success, but the way she has carried it. Every song she releases feels intentional, carrying messages of hope, faith, and endurance that connect deeply with listeners going through personal battles. Her music has often been described as a source of comfort in moments of grief, uncertainty, and emotional struggle, giving people something steady to hold on to when life feels unstable. But CeCe's impact is not limited to music alone. Through her books and personal reflections, she has allowed people to see the human side of her journey. She has spoken about the pressure of fame, the challenges of staying grounded in a demanding industry, and the constant effort it takes to protect her values in environments that do not always share them. This honesty has made her influence even more relatable, especially to those who are also trying to live with purpose in the middle of pressure. One of the most defining parts of her legacy is her consistency. In an industry where many voices shift with trends, CeCe has remained steady in her beliefs. She has made choices that prioritized her faith over wider exposure. Even when those decisions meant stepping away from opportunities that could have pushed her deeper into mainstream entertainment. For her, success has never been about visibility alone, but about alignment with her values. Her life outside music also reflects that same foundation. As a wife and mother, CeCe has often emphasized the importance of family and balance. Her marriage to Alvin Love II and her commitment to raising her children in a faith-centered home show that her beliefs are not just part of her public image, but part of her daily life. Beyond her music, CeCe Winans has supported charitable work for families, children, and communities in need, using her platform for lasting impact beyond fame. Her choices have also sparked differing views, with some questioning her distance from mainstream opportunities, while others see integrity in them. This reflects the ongoing tension between faith, fame, and conviction. Her connection to figures like Mel Gibson highlights a shared experience in public life, holding personal beliefs under scrutiny, where staying true often comes with cost, but abandoning it costs even more. In the end, CeCe Winans' legacy is not defined by controversy or speculation. It is defined by endurance, faith, and the ability to remain grounded in a world that constantly demands more compromise. And long after the conversations fade, what remains is simple, yet powerful. An influence built not on noise, but on conviction that continues to speak even in silence. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Stay tuned for more eye-opening videos and click the next one on your screen for more surprising stories.